Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on some jades. This jade was started from a cutting in January of 2019. It was given to me by Joey and it's doing quite well. It's undergone quite a few changes over the years. I'll show you the history of it now. My next task will be to turn this large jade cutting into the start of a bonsai tree. I don't really want to touch the bottom. The cut point on the bottom is dried out after, quite a few weeks. So, if I wanted a shorter trunk, I could cut the trunk off, cut the bottom of it off here, have a shorter trunk. But I don't want to do that because then I'd have to let that cut point dry out again for another couple of weeks. And I don't mind the height of the trunk. I think it's not that tall before you get to the first branch. So to pot the tree up, I've definitely got to take some weight off the top of the tree, otherwise it'll just tip over in the pot. I finished defoliating the jade. There's a big pile of leaves here, and now you can see the structure of the tree much more clearly. The cutting is much lighter now. It's actually really light. There's a lot of weight in these leaves. All the water must be in the leaves because this is really light. That'll stay up in a pot, no problems. It'll look quite small in this pot, but I hope to grow it quite large someday. So there's an upright branch here that needs to be pruned off, so I'll take that one off. Planting this cutting should be fairly easy. I'll just put my drainage screens in the bottom of the pot, fill it with soil, and then I'll kind of rotate my cutting into the soil until it's stable. I'll level the soil with a spoon. Next, I have to put the cutting in the soil. The cutting is quite one-sided. You can see all the growth is on this side. So when it's in the pot, I'll put this side towards the sun. So the sun will be shining on this side, so we'll get some branching coming out this side of the tree. I'll offset it just slightly, maybe it off to here. And I'm going to bury it quite deep to about there. See how that looks. If you ever want to make a tree look small, put it in a giant pot like this. It looks like a little tiny stick in here. And this is quite a large cutting. If this cutting was just freshly taken off a plant and the bottom was green, you definitely would want that cut to dry out before you planted and watered it. But this one is dried out really nicely, so I can water it. So here I go. The cutting is quite firm in the pot, but I will place some stones around it just to make sure, if I accidentally bump the pot or something, that it's still held in here securely. I kept the cutting out of the rain. I just misted it. I kept the soil quite dry. And now the roots are kind of established. The plant is sitting upright. The reason it looks windswept is that I've been growing it near the window and all the growth has been reaching for the window side of the plant room. So I'll have to change it around and kind of balance it out so it doesn't look like a windswept jade. So it looks like it's quite stable in the pot without any rocks around it. Yeah. So I'll remove these rocks. They don't need to be here. If it's going to be a really large base on this jade, I probably don't want branches down low. I just want to show off that big thick trunk. So I'm thinking that a lot of the lower branches can be removed. I'm going to remove this lowest branch now, and I'll just prune it as flush as I can for now, and then I'll clean it up later. So here I go. Just like that. I'll come over here now, and I'm going to take this other branch off here, this low one here. Nice flush cut, so here I go. Like that. Another nice cutting. And then I'll come out front and take that little shoot off. And I'll just come in with the scissors. And off it goes. I think the rest of the work on this tree will be more of a profile prune. Just pruning back the longer branches to kind of keep it growing compact so it doesn't take up a lot of space on the bench and so it doesn't get too side heavy and, puts a lot of pressure on the trunk to tip over. You want to keep all your center of weight over the top of the trunk to keep the tree balanced. So it's getting a little long on these side branches, so I'll be pruning those back. Today I got my jades cleaned up, I got my forest all cleaned up, and my large single cutting. The other jade, this was the cutting Joey gave me. It rooted and it's been growing really well, and then there's more cuttings off of it down there, and slowly it created a forest. So I think it's done really well this year, and I think that's going to need pruning back, some very hard pruning. We're back to present day time, Christmas Day 2020, and as you can see, the pot is still really large for the size of the tree, but the tree is slowly growing and it doesn't look as ridiculous as it did when I first planted the cutting. When I first planted this cutting, I had the other view as the front. I had the trunk coming up to a Y shape, and then I had a branch in the back. But I'm thinking now, this view looks as good or maybe even better. Having the back branches now the front main leader, and having the two Y-shaped branches towards the rear. It looks okay either way, but I think I'll make this the front now. I'm going to prune the tree up today, and you might be asking, it's looking really good, why would I want to prune it? Why don't I just leave it the way it is? And the answer is I'm pruning it for the future. A lot of the branches are becoming really long and they're becoming heavy out at the tips, and eventually they'll start sagging and possibly even break. So I want to bring the tree in more compact, develop more branch structure. That'll make the trunk look thicker. It'll bring the tree in more compact, so it's a smaller tree, and it should look more miniature. I finished the pruning on the jade. I'll just bring you in close so you can see some of the previous cuts I made to the tree and how they've healed over. Last time I pruned the tree, I took a big branch off here, and you can see it's healed over really nicely. I've also taken a large branch off the bottom of the trunk here. That's healed over really nicely too. The next steps for this tree will be to let all the new branches and foliage grow in, filling it out, creating a more compact tree. It should look quite nice when all the foliage is out. Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Welcome to another Succulent Sunday. Today I'm going to be working on these two jades. My goal today is to do the initial styling work on the one given to me by Connor, and then the one given to me by Joey. I want to prune it back. It's getting very tall and very heavy up top. You can see if you wiggle the top, the whole base of the tree wiggles. It's a bit unstable. And everything on this tree is kind of grown very upright, reaching for the light. So, yeah, there's going to be some styling work coming on both trees. I know I said I wasn't going to do this on this tree, but I'm also thinking I've got a branch here that's low down. I could cut, there's one there, I could cut it off here, keeping, this upright structure around here, in this section, keep as much of this branching as I can, but reduce the height of the tree back very short, and again, very baobab-like. And I think that would be good. That height would then suit kind of the rest of the cuttings around it, creating a bit of a forest, even though it's still in this giant pot. But all right, here I go with the second large jade. And again, I've let the soil dry out. I didn't water it for quite a few days now. So again, I want that same kind of style, except this one has a little more upright branches, so I'll leave it a little taller before I start my subdividing. If it doesn't look good, then I can reduce it further. So here I go. Just like that. And again, these cuttings, if you're in the area, the Kitchener Waterloo area, and you want some nice jade cuttings, let me know in the comments, and again, they're yours. So that's that one. I'll prune up the rest and then have a look at it, and if this is still too high, then might prune it back lower. So this one, I've got a ring segment here and one down here, so it's a very rapid growth to this tree. So I'm going to prune it up to the high one first, and then we'll see what it looks like. So here I go, like that. And then back to this one. So this one I've got a segment here, one here. I think I'll prune it to the upper one. We'll have a look at it. So here I go. Like that. These are really heavy. All these leaves are full of water. Okay, so let's go back to the front now. And I'll come out front and I'll have a look at it and just kind of put my hand over and see if this is too upright for that kind of baobab style. So here I go. Like that. The other one, I'm going to take it back from this segment down to here. So I'll take that off. Like that. Then the back one, or the front one, or whatever it is, right side one. I can take it back. I have a segment. This branch comes out just below this segment, so I could take the top off, so I will. Another cutting. So there's that. I think that's a good height, but do I need to take that branch back? I'm really enjoying my succulent Sundays. I think succulents in the world of bonsai is, hasn't been explored fully yet. I think there's a lot of succulents out there that could make really nice bonsai. And I hope in the upcoming episodes of Succulent Sunday we'll be exploring new species, trying out new techniques, and trying to create beautiful succulent bonsai. Here is a look at the bonsai forest today. As you can see, it's grown in since the last hard pruning of the trees. And today I'm going to be pruning them up once again. Not only do bonsai come in different sizes, but so do bonsai books. Tom from the YouTube channel Grow and Clip Bonsai for Seniors sent me a Christmas card and a little bonsai book. The mini bonsai book. And it's really cool. It's filled full of little facts about styling trees and a good kind of beginner's book. So I'll add that to my collection. Thanks very much, Tom. Jades or crassulas don't get a lot of respect in the bonsai world, and there's several reasons why. Number one, there's succulents, and a lot of people don't consider succulent plants to be bonsai. They're not really true trees by some people's definition. The second reason is the root base. Generally, you don't get that flared buttress root base with nice surface roots. You can get those on a really old jade. The surface roots will thicken up and become woody, and you can get some flare at the base of the tree, but it takes a long, long time. The second reason is that most jades aren't worked on like bonsai to get like a trunk, primary branches, secondary branches, and tertiary branches, and so on. So the structure of jades is usually not in a tree-like form, and I mean, they don't really look like a typical tree. They're more of a succulent tree look. And if you're from the part of the world or parts of the world where you see succulent trees a lot, giant tree-form cacti and all kinds of tree-form succulents, maybe the jade is more familiar to you, the structure of it, and it looks more like a tree. You can imagine yourself walking underneath it, and it may look realistic to you, but most people in the world don't see succulent plants in a tree form, so it looks quite alien to most people, and they can't really relate to them. They don't imagine themselves walking amongst giant succulent trees because it's just a foreign concept. So I think jades have a lot of potential. They're easy to grow. They're fairly fast growing. They can handle cooler temperatures. They can handle low light, high light. They generally grow best in high light conditions. But yeah, they're a versatile tree, and I think you can create a really nice bonsai from a crassula. I think it just takes work and maybe a vision of what you want the tree to look like in the future. To me, this jade forest is starting to get a bit of a scale value to it. I can imagine a person about this high walking amongst the giant succulent trees. Another problem with jades is the trunk is very smooth on them, and it's only in very old trees that you get some bark on them, some flaky bark, but they don't get generally those muscular veins going up them. It's just not how the tree grows. I've experimented in the past of scarring the trunks on the jades, and it was very successful. My best example was my baobab style jade, and it scarred up really nicely and healed and gave the trunk all kinds of interesting texture. The problem is I had mealybugs on it, and I think there was mealybugs in the roots, and they were hiding in the crevices on the trunk, and spraying didn't seem to kill them, and in the end they killed the jade, which was really unfortunate because it was a good experiment in scarring the trunk. So today I'm going to scar the trunk on this jade. It's very smooth. This is a fairly young tree. So I think the scarring will really help kind of create more of a scale value for this tree, making it look more miniature. I'm going to start today by looking at the forest, the overall silhouette of it, and I think it's quite nice. It's kind of an asymmetrical triangular form. I could maybe use, a thicker tree here to kind of fill out the triangular form to the forest, but generally I think it looks quite pleasing to the eye. This forest is planted in a very big pot. It's very deep. It would look much better in a shallower pot aesthetically, but horticulturally, this deep pot is really good for the jades. Water drains really quickly through the soil, so you can water and fertilize them a lot in the summer, and you get really good, strong growth on them. So a pot like this, being a clay pot, it helps absorb excess moisture in the soil. So it keeps the roots really happy. So I'm going to keep it in this pot, even though it's a really deep pot. So it doesn't look so good aesthetically, but horticulturally, I think it's more important at this stage in their development to keep the trees nice and healthy. Jades or crassulas, they don't really grow to a kind of a recognizable tree form in nature. They do grow really large, big trunks on them, but they're kind of tall, not a structured tree. They're very almost bush-like. So it doesn't really convey the idea of a miniature tree. If you see a jade in nature, they just look like a larger version of maybe a houseplant. So I'm going to try and style these jades to look like the giant African baobab tree, kind of with a spreading canopy, keep the trunk thick, keep the tree low. Try for that kind of a look. I'm going to start the pruning work now. So the first thing, behind the main tree, you can see there's a lot of foliage coming off the main tree, some low branches. And right behind the main tree is another tree. I don't know if it was a leaf that fell down and rooted. I don't think I planted a cutting there. Or it could be a shoot that came off the root base and has grown up. So I need to remove this tree at the back here. It's just too close to the main tree. So I will come in with my scissors here and just prune it off at the ground level. Here I go. Just like that. Let me get it out. So there's another possible cutting. I think another reason jades aren't that popular is that they're so easy to propagate. You can pull a leaf off it, stick it in some soil, and it'll turn into a giant plant eventually. Cuttings generally root 100% with some proper care. So they're very easy to propagate. They're a very common plant probably throughout the world. So they're not really respected as an exotic species. I've removed that one tree growing behind the main tree, but I still have some branches growing down low on the main tree. I've got this branch here and a bunch of new branches developing down even lower. And I think by removing that back tree, these will get light and they'll probably form into branches. So I've got to decide, do I want branches down lower on the trunk? And I'm thinking no, because this trunk will thicken up more over the years, and I don't think I want, branches coming off. I think I want to keep a trunk and then have all my branching start from here up. So I'm going to remove those lower branches. All right, here I go. So I'll reach in here with the scissors and just cut off these lower branches and these little shoots that are starting here. I can probably just rub those off with my finger. Like that. I'm going up the trunk now to my first branches. So I've got basically 2 branches coming from one spot, and this one's slightly lower. And I like that. I like, the fact it's spreading out in this area. I wouldn't want to remove any of these primary branches. These are the ones that I cut back to basically stubs. You can still see the cut points here. This one doesn't have a cut point, but this one does right here. And they will heal over eventually to create a smooth flowing branch, but it takes time. So this main branch, I thought about the front of the tree, and I think I considered different fronts in another video, but I like this as the front because the tree leans forward towards the viewer, the primary trunk comes towards you, or the primary branch. And so it gives a good, stable feeling to the tree. There is one part on this branch that comes off to the right-hand side, and it's getting very tall. The other part of this branch, it divides here, and there's one kind of going vertical or back into the tree. So it's not really a good branch. I would rather something fanning out towards the front. I do in this area, I have some branching coming towards the front, but again it comes off kind of an awkward looking basic branch. So I'm thinking of removing that whole top branch and just keeping this one. I think that would make a better looking front, and it would shorten the tree down quite a bit. Now I could, this branch that comes off to the right here, I could shorten it to here and see if anything develops in this area. It might be a good idea, so I get another branch coming out here in this spot of sunlight. So I think I will. I'll prune it off just above this segment here and see if anything grows in this area. If nothing develops, if it just dries back to the main branch line, no harm done. So here I go. I'll cut off the top of this branch. For these cuts on the jade, I use the ratcheting pruners that Tom sent me from Grow and Clip Bonsai for Seniors. They have a really thin blade and sharp, and they seem to cut jades really, really nicely. So here's the branch, so you can see the segment. So I need to cut just above that segment. So here I go. Big cut coming up. Done. Here is a look at the tree now, so you can see it would look better with something developing in this area. So time will tell what happens here. So these cuts, I just leave them to air dry, and they form a scab over them eventually, and it dies back to the next segment ring, and then hopefully I'll get some branching coming out from that segment. I'm going to prune back the rest of the tree now. I've got lots of branches that are growing vertical here, so I need to shorten those to outward facing leaves to encourage branching that fans out from the trunk. So here I go. So I will begin with this branch here. So it comes up. I'm going to remove a leaf from the base just so I can see what's going on. So it comes up from this primary branch, and there's plenty of leaves that are fanning outwards, My radial direction of this branch is back here, so I want everything kind of fanning out towards this side of the tree. So I'm looking for a leaf that faces that direction. I've got one right here, so I'll prune just above that leaf. Right here. Like that. And I may get rid of some of these branches once I get it pruned back. I'll have a look at the branch structure, and some may be eliminated, and this may be one of them. There's another branch growing out the back here that I'm also going to shorten, and I'm again looking for leaves that face outwards. I don't have a lot here. I'll have to prune it right back to here. Just kind of shortening it a bit. Some of these lower leaves on the branches I'm going to remove, just so you can see the branch structure a little more clearly, so it's not a massive foliage. It helps also to get light to some of the branches that you want to develop, so they're not shaded out. So let's rotate it around now, and you can see the big cut point on this branch. So there's a look at the branch. So the radial direction is kind of towards the camera now. So I'm thinking, you know, that branch I just pruned up, I don't think I want it because I have better branching fanning out. But I'll keep it for now. So on this one, it's getting quite tall, and I'll want to prune it to a leaf here, so I'll prune the top off there, like that. That reduces it, and it should continue branching and fanning out. So that's got this primary branch pruned up. There is, on this primary branch, there is some branches growing towards the inside here that I'm going to remove. I know I won't use those. So here's one here. I'm taking that out. And some of these leaves that are, you know, fanning out towards the middle of the tree, I'm removing to clean out that structure. I mentioned on jades that they don't really look like a tree form, but if you clean out the leaves, it helps expose the branches and gives it a more tree-like feeling. So now I'm going to work on this front branch. So again, you know, I have branches growing in towards the center of the tree that I've got to clean out. So this one can come right off. That one there. I've got one growing back in here. That gets cleaned out too. There's one kind of growing vertical here, which I think is okay. And then the ones out the front here, they need to be pruned back. So I think I'm going to take this one back to here. There's one coming out the front. I'm just going to shorten it a bit, taking the tip off. And this one I will also shorten, taking the tip off. Taking the tip off stimulates it to grow more branching. So instead of one branch, you prune the tip off, and then that branch divides into 2 or 3, and so on. So you get more and more branching as this branch, the primary branch, extends outwards. So that's got that roughly pruned up, and there will be some more leaf and branch selection coming on it. So my third trunk, you can see the chop here, and I'm looking for branches that are growing in towards the center of the tree. I do have a vertical one here, which is okay. It's okay to have something vertical, but then I have a branch coming off here that I can remove. I'll take it back. There's a branch here. I can prune the tip off. 2, I think back to here. This one out the back, it's getting quite long. Again, I will take the tip off. I'm always looking for leaves that are fanning outwards. So I'll come in here and take the tip off. Hard to get in there. I think the rest is pretty good. I could reduce this vertical one. It's getting a little tall. I'll take the tip off here. If I can get in there, right here. It has a branch forming out the back, which is fine. There's an old leaf I'll remove there. Okay, so I think that's got the basic branch structure pruned up. So now I've got to thin it out. There's too many leaves here. It just looks like a bush and not a tree. So I'm going to remove any leaves that are kind of pointing in towards the center of the tree. So I'll keep all my leaves that are fanning outwards. That's a good start. Help me see what's going on here. And I'll show you a top view of that once it's done. And you'll see what I'm talking about. There's an older leaf here. I already have a branch growing from that junction, so I can take the older leaf out. And there's some older leaves back here I can remove. Again, just to thin it out. You can totally defoliate these jades if you want to. They will grow new leaves in. But you do have to keep them on the dry side if you defoliate them until you get new leaves in. You can't water them, otherwise you'll get root rot. So now I'll show you a top view and you can see how I've thinned that branch structure. Here is a look at that branch from the top, so you can see how I thinned it out. You compare it to the branch over here, which is just a mass of foliage. This branch, you can see the structure of it. It's thinned out to get lots of light in there. So I'm going to do the same for the other two branches, thinning them out, and then we'll come back and see how the tree looks. Here is a look at the top of the jade now, so thinned and pruned. So you can see it's much more open now. You can see the branch structure, and that's what you want in a jade. You want to be able to see the branches, and that's what gives it a tree-like form. If it's just covered up in foliage like this, it looks more like a bush. And this will fill in again quite quickly, I'm sure. So that's the number one tree pruned up. Now, I may have to do some branch selection on it, so I'm going to go into the front view and just see if there's any branches that I want to remove. Sort of a final check. In this area I have like one lower branch here and one above it. I don't really want to get rid of the one above it, but I could prune it back to more of an upward facing leaf like that, so it grows more vertical and this stays a spreading branch. I've got a branch on the inside of this branch here, and I'm not sure I want that. I think I want to keep the primary branch structure clean, so I'm going to take that one off. I want to be able to see these three primary branches where they divide. I don't want it cluttered up with foliage. The foliage will come up in the canopy. Some of these branches are getting a little long, but they have, some branch division, so I don't really want to prune it back. This vertical one here, it's quite vertical. It's quite tall. I kept this branch out the back, but I'm thinking I better prune it off shorter, so I will. Off to here. It's just too tall. And I think I'll leave it at that. It's a little heavy on this side of the tree, but this side, it'll eventually fill out again, and I could prune this back and kind of balance it out in the future. So that's one of the many trees pruned up. So now I'll begin working on my smaller trees. And I'll try and kind of maintain that asymmetrical triangular shape to the entire forest. I'm hoping that someday these jades look just right in the pot, that they'll grow and thicken and I'll get a canopy. and the pot will look just right for them. So that's my goal. So I'm going to start pruning up this tree. It's kind of the second biggest tree in the planting. The first thing I notice on this tree is that I have two opposite branches. And I think I want to get rid of the one on the inside because it'll get shaded out by the main tree anyway. So I'm going to remove that one totally. So here I go. Just like that. It leaves a bit of a hole here, but as this fills out, it'll look quite normal, I think. So next, the rest of the branch structure is looking quite good. I've got a good leader growing up the front here, but the branch behind it is getting too tall and vertical and thick, so I need to prune that branch back to make this my leader here. Alright, so I'm pruning this tree. I'll do a little leaf thinning first so I can see the branch structure. And it might be a good idea to do all your leaf thinning before you tackle the branch pruning, so you can see what's going on, sort of a partial defoliation. I think it helps you see what's going on with the branches so you can prune them a little better. So there is a branch growing out the back, a new one. This is subdivided. And I think I'll take off the vertical part and keep that branch growing out the back. So here I go. I'll take that tip off like that. And I'm going to continue with my leaf thinning here. And then I'll just prune the tip off of this one. Back to a leaf facing backwards to about here. Like that. So that shortens this to become more of a branch, and I'll grow this as my trunk leader, which will, it's going in a good direction towards me. This branch here off to the left hand side is totally shading it out, so it needs pruning back. So I'll prune it back to here. Take off this leaf. There's a lot of giant old leaves here. And the leaf size will reduce on a jade. Give them good sunlight. You can do, leaf pruning. You can keep pinching the tips of your branches or pruning them, and that'll create more ramification, and the leaf size will decrease over the years. And you can get them really, really small with good techniques. Taking the tip off this branch. Yeah, you can get the leaf size quite tiny on the jades. Just thinning these branches out. And you can twist the leaves off if you want. You don't have to cut them. Sometimes it's easier to get in with the scissors. You just leave a little bit of a stub of the leaf and it dries up fairly quickly and drops off. So I'm just thinning it, leaving a few leaves at the tip of every growing tip. I think that's got that left-hand branch pruned up. The apex I'm not going to touch. I pruned this one, so I just have to prune this branch now. And I'll take it back to, I've already got a branch coming off here and one vertical, so I'll take the vertical one off. And I've got a branch coming out the back here, which is nice, so it subdivides from 1 to 2, which is what you want. So I think jades have the potential to become really awesome bonsai. I think we've just got to get more of them out there, promote them a bit more, and show people some good examples of a jade that's being bonsai'd, not just one that's growing as like a house plant. So hopefully, you know, this will be a good example for the future of what you can do with the jade. This tree's just young, or all these trees are young, but you know, I'll keep working on them and developing them into hopefully something really cool in the future. Okay, so I think that's got that tree all pruned up. It's looking quite nice. All these smaller jades in the forest, I'll be thinning them out and doing any structural pruning they need, but I don't think they'll need a whole lot. So I'll just work away at them, and then we'll come back and see what the forest looks like. Here is what I took off the jade forest today. Some big cuts, a lot of leaves, a lot of fine branches, but I sure took a lot off. Let's fly in now and have a look at the forest. You can see from the fly-in that the jades are starting to get some branch structure. I got primary branches, I'm starting to develop the secondary branching, and I'll continue, you know, further developing those branches in the future. I've been working away at the jades all afternoon, and I just noticed it's starting to get dark out. The days are still quite short here, but they're getting a little longer every day. I was going to scar up the trunk on the jade, so I think I'll leave that for part 2 of this video, where I'll do some scarring of the trunk and I'll probably work on another jade. So that is it for part 1 of this video. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.